Alright, statistical concepts and market returns, questions from your end of chapter exercises. Which of the following group best illustrates sample? A set of all estimates for ExxonMobil's EPS for the next financial year. Set of all estimates. When the data is being considered in its totality, you're talking about the population, not the sample. This is the population. Population of all the estimates for the next year EPS. It's not the sample. We're looking for sample. The FTSE Euro Top 100 as a representative of the European stock market. The complete European stock market as a population is being represented by a few shares out of these. Yes, FTSE Euro Top 100, this is a sample for European stock market. So this is correct option. Why not C? UK shares traded on Wednesday of the last week that also closed above 120 on the London Stock Exchange. So it's a collection of all those shares above 120. So it's a population, not a sample. So when you select some part of the population, a subset of the population, that is sample. So that makes B to be the correct option. Next, published ratings on stocks ranging from 1 strong sell to strong buy are examples of which measurement scale? Yes, ordinal. We have just given order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they can be even in the reverse order 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So it could be in the reverse order. It's ordinal. It's an ordinal. Correct. A is the correct option. You got it right. Next. See, the questions are straightforward, which are expected to be difficult because EOC questions are considered to be challenging. Which of the following groups best illustrates population? Population. The whole set of data under consideration. 500 companies in S&P 500 index. All the companies in S&P 500. This is population. The whole set of data within the particular context represents population. Correct option. New York Stock Exchange listed stocks in the Dow Jones and Industrial Average. Particular shares out of the total shares listed in the New York Stock Exchange. This is sample. Lehman's Aggregate Bond Index as a representative of the US bond market. Again, it's a subset of the whole market. It's a sample. So the correct option is A. In descriptive statistics, what is descriptive statistics? A measure used to describe the characteristics of the population. Descriptive statistics is a method or measure used to describe a particular characteristic of population. It's referred to as. So in descriptive statistics, an example of parameter represents the whole population. Median of a population, yes. Mean for the population. Standard deviation of the population. This represents parameter. Means of sample or observation, this is statistic, sample statistic. Sample statistics is used to measure a characteristic of the sample. So this is for the sample, this is for the sample, this is for the whole population. That makes A to be the correct option. And as you can see, A it is. See, the questions are quite straightforward. And even in Kaplan, the questions are straightforward. So that's why not much in-depth computations as such are not required. Next question, number 5. A mutual fund has the return frequency distribution shown in the following table. Return between this interval 3 times. Return between this interval. All this has been tabulated. What exactly do we need to do? Which of the following statement is correct? The relative frequency of the interval -1 to 2. -1 to 2. Relative frequency is 20%. First of all, you need to calculate the total of these absolute frequencies as your sum of frequencies. Total results 3, 7, 10, 12, 23 and 5 gives you 60. And this class frequency 12 is what percentage of the total? In order to calculate the relative frequency, 12 by 60 gives you 20%. A is the right answer. Look no further. The relative frequency of the interval between -1 to 2 is 20%. Correct. Next. An analyst is using the data in the following table to prepare a statistical report. The cumulative frequency for the interval -1.71 to 2.03. We have not been given the table in this question. So this is the raw data given from year 1 to year 12. portfolio deviations given year 1 through year 12. We have to calculate the cumulative relative frequency for this interval. Data is raw. What it will help you first, it will help you to calculate the class interval, and then we have to lay down the tabulation data, sort it out into intervals, and then we can calculate the relative frequency. The difference between negative 1.71 and 2.03, it is 3.74. This is your class interval, 3.74. So you should start from the lowest most value. The lowest most value is negative 9.19. This should be your starting interval. And you need to add 3.74 to it, negative 9.19 plus 3.74. You will have the first class, negative 9.19 and negative 5.45. He has tabulated data space. This is the first one, low class limit, upper class limit. How did we come up with this one? You calculate the difference between the upper class limit and low class limit. This is the class interval. You started off with the lowest value as your low bound or the low class limit, added 3.74 to it, gave you the upper class. This way we continued developing intervals, and then using telemarks, we just listed each of these numbers into each of the relevant intervals, and this is how we have determined the absolute frequency. I'm sure you know how to construct the frequency distribution using telemark, a basic thing. Very unlikely to see a question on the real exam where we'll have to construct the intervals. It will take more than 90 seconds. So a straightforward idea whether a question is of real exam level or not, if you can solve it within 120 seconds or a maximum of 150 seconds, fine, it has to be there. If it's taking much more time like this one where you have to construct the intervals, so this is just for the sake of practice. So we have been given the absolute frequency. We calculated relative frequency by adding up the frequencies. I think there were how many number of 1, 2, 4, 3 and 2, 12 observations. 1 out of 12, 0.083. 2 out of 12, 3 out of 4 out of 12, and all this. This is your relative frequency. Since the question specifically required the cumulative relative frequency, so we have just accumulated the results in this last column, and we needed to calculate in this particular class negative 1.71 to 2.03, and this gives us 0.583. That makes C to be the correct option. C it is. The frequency distribution summarizes what? Tabular display. Yes, frequency distribution is a tabular display of your data. It's a correct option. Why not B? Overlapping intervals. No. Intervals should not overlap. Each observation should be placed in a specific interval, and no two intervals should overlap. Yes, they may be connected through class boundaries, but they must not overlap. Overlapping is not allowed in the frequency distribution. Incorrect. A relatively large number of intervals. No. If you have to keep large number of intervals, there is no need to calculate the frequency distribution or construct a frequency distribution. There has to be just lower number of, because large number of intervals will totally fail the main purpose of tabulating the data. So this is incorrect. Relatively small is appropriate word. Relatively small number of intervals. So that makes A to be the correct option, because frequency distribution summarizes your result in a tabular form. Next, question number 8. Based on the table below, which of the following statement is correct? We have been given 4 intervals. This is the range of intervals, and we have been given absolute frequency. What are we required to do? The relative frequency of interval C. Interval C, relative frequency. What is the total number of observations? 26. For C, it's 15 upon 26. 15 upon 26 is equal to 57.69. 57.69%. It says the relative frequency of interval C is 15. No, it is 57.69. The cumulative frequency of interval D is 100%. We will have to calculate or construct the cumulative frequency, starting with 2, 2 plus 7, 9, 9 plus 15, 24, and 2, 26. This is your cumulative frequency. The cumulative frequency of interval D is 100%. Up to D is 100%, but alone D is not 100%. This is not correct. Up to D, these are the 4 intervals. So up to D, the total observation will be 100%, but D alone is not 100%, not D, because there are 4 intervals, so we can't say all the 100% data falls within D. This is incorrect as well. The cumulative frequency of interval C, 24 observations out of 26, so 24 by 26 gives you 92%, or 92.3% exactly. That's the right answer. C is the correct option. The following histogram shows a distribution of S&P 500 index annual returns for the 50 years period. The interval containing the median return is. We have to calculate the median return. For median, we have to first arrange the data in ascending order, which is already laid down to you. So we have to add up the frequencies first. Frequency for the first class, first interval is 1, 0, means 1 plus 0, 1. This is 1 again. These are the bar charts, and from this table, from this bar chart, I'm simply writing up the cumulative frequency. 1 plus 0, plus 1, 2, plus 1, 3, 4, 4 plus 4, 8, 8 plus 3, 11, 11 plus 2, 13, 13 plus 7, 20, 20 plus 4, 24, 24 plus 6, 30, and 30 plus 7, 37. I think fine. We just need to calculate the median. What's the median? A middle number. How do we calculate? N plus 1 upon 2th item. What are the number of observations? 50. 50 plus 1 upon 2, that is 51, upon 2, that is 25.5. So we need to find out the 25 and 26 number and need to take the average somewhere between 25 and 26th position, 25th and 26th position. Starting from here, these are the 20 observations, and all these numbers written in the top of these bar charts are cumulative numbers. So we need to find the 25th and 26th. These are the numbers till here are 24. Both 25 and 26 are in this interval. Both 25 and 26 are in this interval. So it means if it is in this interval, so the model class, the median class will be 13 to 18. This is your median class, 13 to 18. So the interval containing the median, for that we need cumulative frequency. The mid numbers between the data falls between 13 to 18%. And I'm sure you would have got the same result. Yes, correct. C. Same bar chart, but this time something different is required. Based on the previous histogram, which I've pasted here, the distribution is best described as having one mod. Mod is the most repetitive value. So we have basically 3 mods, not 2 even. So distribution has 3 modes. As simple as that. 3 modes. These are EOC questions, gentlemen. 11th. The following is the frequency polygon of monthly exchange rates changes in the US dollar to Japanese yen spot exchange for the 4 years period. A positive change represents yen appreciation. Upward means yen appreciation. And the negative change represents yen depreciation. So there we have the appreciation, depreciation. Based on the chart, yen appreciation occurred. We do not have the exact tabulated data, so we just have to use our intuitions to get the correct option. This is the increasing trend till here. Here yen is appreciating, and the next part is showing depreciation, decrease in the exchange rate. So based on the chart, yen appreciate occurred more than 50% of the time. As you can see, the more observations are in this region, so clearly it's greater than 50%. Decrease is comparatively lower in proportion, so we can assume that the appreciation occurred more than 50% of the time. Why not B? Yen appreciate was less frequent. Appreciation in fact was more frequent. See, appreciation was more frequent. Incorrect. In the interval 0 to 0 to 2.0 interval occurred between 20% of the time. We cannot calculate with absolute accuracy because we have not been given the data of this in a proper tabulated form, what we can see from the graph itself that for more than 50% of the time the yen appreciated, and this is shown by this region of your diagram. That makes A to be the correct option. We do not have numbers to support the answer, but at least from the look of it, that's what we got. Same information, but the requirement is different. The height of the bar in a histogram represents the matching data interval of what? When we draw a histogram, it is not based upon the relative frequency, rather it is on absolute frequency. Histogram takes in the class intervals and the absolute frequency on vertical axis, and that's what we need to construct in a bar chart. Without any doubt, it's B. Based on the table, the arithmetic mean of the equity returns is closest to. We have been given the equity returns of 6 companies A, B, C, D, E, F. We have to calculate the arithmetic mean, and that means you simply have to add these all up, divide it with the number of observations. It will give you negative 4.53, negative 1.4, negative 1.2, positive. The result is positive 0.2116. This is your mean. Based on the table, the arithmetic mean of the equity returns is closest to what? Since it's positive, these are ruled out. So your mean is closest to 0.70. Company E. Mean is closest to company E. That makes C to be the correct options. Gentlemen, straightforward questions from your EOC. I didn't make these questions. This is what you have right in front of you. Same set of data, but this time we need something different. Equity returns are given for these 6 companies. Using the data from the table, the difference between the median and the mod. Mod is the most repeating value. The value, the observation that is highest in frequency is called mod. Here we have negative 1.20 as our mod. Right? We will have to calculate mean. I think we have done it in the previous question. It was 0.2116%. So mod is 1.2% negative and mean is 0.2116. What do we need? Using the data from the table, the difference between the median, we haven't yet identified the median. For that, we will have to arrange our data in ascending order, which it already is. Your data is already arranged in the ascending order, starting from the smallest to the largest. Since there are 6 observations, so it's going to be 6 plus 1 upon 2. That is 3.5th value. That is 3rd and 4th value combined. So this is your first value. Second, interestingly, your 3rd and 5th value, they are both negative 1.2. So this is your median. He says you have to find the difference between median and the mod. This is your median. This is the mod. What is the difference between them? Median and mod? 0. Absolutely right. All of you got the right result. So B is the right answer. Correct. Next. The annual returns for 3 portfolios, portfolio P, Q, R, are given in the following table. Portfolio PR were created in year 1. That's we have the result for year 1 as well. But Q was created in year 2. That's why there is nothing in year 1 related to portfolio Q, and returns are given up to the year 5. Okay, what is needed? The median annual return from portfolio creation to 2013 for. We have to calculate median for all. Now this is a time consuming question. Starting first with portfolio P and starting from the smallest to the largest. This is the smallest. 1 means the smallest. Bigger than negative 3 is 3, 2. 3rd position would be for this. 4th position and 5th position. I think I should take a different color so as to differentiate what I'm doing. Now for the next one, this is the lowest value. This is starting from the smallest to a larger one, to a further larger one, and the largest. Okay. For the portfolio R, the lowest value is 1, 2, 4, this one 3, 4 and 5. Now, in this case, since there are 5 values, this is the mid number. This is the median for portfolio P. Portfolio Q, there are 2 numbers, 2 and 3. They must be combined and divided with 2. 6 plus 4, 10 by 2, 5. So, median for portfolio Q is 5%. Lastly, we have portfolio R, and there are 5 observations, and the middle number, third, is right here. Now we can get our result. The median annual return from portfolio creation to 2013 for portfolio P is 4.5. No, it is 4%. Incorrect. Portfolio Q is 4%. No, it was 5%. Wrong. We just calculated an average of 6 and 4. Wrong. Portfolio R is higher than its arithmetic mean and annual return. Portfolio R, median for this number is 3. For this portfolio, it's 3. It says portfolio R is higher than its arithmetic mean. We have to calculate the mean also. For mean, what you will do, you add all these 1, minus 1, 0, 4 plus 4, 8, 8 plus 3, 11. 11 divided by 5 is 2.2. So the mean is 2.2. As per the last option C, the arithmetic mean, the median is higher than arithmetic mean. Yes, it makes perfect sense. Your median is higher than arithmetic mean. 3 is greater than 2.2. So that makes C to be the correct option. Even you have cancelled out A and B, C wouldn't have required this much effort. You could have selected C straight away. And C it is. Last year, an investor allocated his retirement savings in the asset classes shown in the following table. These are the asset classes. Large cap US equities, 20% investment was made in these equities. Out of the total funds invested, 40% was invested in small cap US equities, 25% funds in emerging market equities, and 15% was invested in high yield bonds. So basically, this is the proportion of your investment. And these are the expected returns. So what are we required to calculate? The weighted average return. So it's a very straightforward question. 20% weightage to be given to 8%, 40% to 12%, 25% to -3, and 15% to 4. And you just have to calculate the weighted average return of 0.2 times 8 plus 0.4 times 12 and negative 0.25 times 3 and plus 0.15 times 4 gives you an average return of 6.25. and which is closest to your option C, 6.3. And C, straightforward questions, no twist whatsoever. The area that requires a real effort would be the next readings. You're reading 8, 9, 10, sampling, probability distribution, normal distributions, Z-score. That is the area that these first two are comparatively easier. So we got the result, 6.3. The following table shows the annual returns for fund X. What is needed? Geometric mean. Geometric mean. We learned how to calculate the geometric mean whenever there is a negative number, or even if there is no negative number. This is the suggested approach. 19.5 means 1 plus 195. Negative 19, that is 100, or 100 minus 1.9, 0.98. Just 1 minus 0.19 or 100 minus. So it's 0.981. That's the reason whenever there's a negative sign, you should use this one. Otherwise, having a negative number in the square root will result a mathematical anomaly. The calculator will give a maths error, undefined. 19.7 will be 1.197. 35 would be 1.35. And 5.7 will be 1.057. You just have to multiply these all, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, fifth root. You will calculate the fifth root of all this. Remember, whenever it's negative, you have to net it off with 100 and write the difference. And then calculate the fourth root, fifth root, whatever it is, and you need to deduct 1 out of it. I've calculated early 1.149. minus 1 gives you 0.149, and it needs to be converted into percentage. That is 14.9%, and that makes A to be the correct option. Straightforward, just need to plug in the numbers and you got your result. A manager invests $5,000 annually in a security for 4 years at the following prices. These are the different prices that he invested $5,000 every year. Average price. Now we have three possibilities. We can either use geometric mean or arithmetic mean or harmonic mean. Now here the question is that what we just studied. We studied if you need to calculate the prices or the returns over an extended period in order to calculate the annualized rate for a period of 5 or 10 years, you use geometric mean. Right? When you are purchasing a security over an extended period of time or putting a certain amount of investment in a particular security and you need to calculate the average price of the security, in that particular situation, harmonic mean is recommended. We discussed that in a little while earlier. So in this case, since we have these 4 different prices and this much was invested every year in particular security, so in this case you need to calculate the average price. For this you should use harmonic mean. And how do we use it? There are 4 numbers, 4 upon 1 upon 62 plus 1 upon 76 plus 1 upon 84 plus 1 upon 90. You can use the inverse function, and once calculated, divide 4 with the result and it will be 76.477. It's a simple arithmetic. It's just you have to identify which of the mean was appropriate. Remember, when the security prices are involved, harmonic mean is appropriate. Appropriate determination of average prices per unit, you should use harmonic. So that makes A to be the correct option. See, he has used harmonic mean. Next, the following exhibit shows the annual MSCI World Index total returns for the last 10 years. MSCI basically stands for Morgan Stanley Capital International. They have issued various types of indices, MCSI, BRIC, MSC, etc. That's not the agenda. So these are the values over the last 10 years, index returns. What are we required to do? The 4th quintile, whether it's a quartile, quintile, decile, I just told you a little while earlier, you should convert it to a percentile. That will be much more convenient for you to calculate. 4th quintile means 4 out of 5, that is 80. So we are talking about the 80th percentile. We need to calculate the 80th percentile from this data, but for that you need to first arrange this in ascending or descending order. So there are 10 observations starting with the smallest one. This is the smallest value, negative 40.33. The one bigger than this is negative 5.02, 9.57, then we have 10.02, after that we have 12.34 ascending order, then 15.25, 16.54, 20.65, then 27.37, and finally 30.79. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we have arranged these returns in ascending order. We have to calculate PAT. We know the formula. First of all, 80% of observations. 80% of observations fall under what? We know the formula. It was Ly is equal to n plus y, y upon 100 for the percentile. It will give you the location. There are total 10 observations, so it's going to be 10 plus 1, 11. 11 multiplied by 80 upon 100. So it gives you 8.8th position. 8.8th position means first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth. This one is the 8th position. Now apply this formula. we need to calculate the 80th percentile, P80. The position, 8th position number, I'll write first the formula x8 plus ly minus 8 into x9 and x8, the difference between these values. The position x8 has a value of 2.65 plus ly was 8.8, this is just we calculated, 8.8 minus 8, and the difference between these two values, 9th value and the 8th value, that is 27.37 minus 20.65. So remember, quintile, decile or quartile converted into percentile will be much easier for you to solve. Otherwise, if the data is straightforward, you can skip this aspect as well. So let us compute the result. 20.65, 0.8 multiplied the difference between these two give you 26.03. That makes B to be the correct option. B it is. Question number 20th. The following exhibit shows the annual MSCI same data. Period from period 1 to 10. All this data is given, which we previously arranged in ascending order. What exactly is required? From year 6 to year 10, just this part of the data, you need to calculate the mean absolute deviation. Mean absolute deviation. First of all, you need to calculate the mean. Add these all, divide it with 5. It will give you mean. And mean comes out to be, I'm referring to the solution 16.4 to save time. This is your mean. Now, you will calculate the deviation from mean. What you will do, 30.79 minus 6.4 must be the positive number. Then 12.34 less 16.4, positive number. Negative 5.04, negative 16.4, whatever the result comes, you need to take the positive one. So you will calculate the positive differences between these all. Put your result in the numerator, 50.98, and divide it with the number of observations, or the number of returns is 5, and it will give you the mean absolute deviations. It's a straightforward question, just little computations are required, otherwise nothing complex. So we got 10.2, that makes A to be the correct option straight away. Alright, the third quartile. Third quartile we know contains 75, or is the position that is 75th or 3/4 of the data, 3/4 of the 75th. So we can straight away calculate the P75 because third quartile is in fact 75th percentile. Right? So gentlemen, what is the number of values? Total 10 values. You will apply the formula. 10 plus 1, 11. 11 upon 75 by 100 into, it will give you 8.25. 8.25. First, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth. This represents x8 and this is your x9. So it's somewhere in between your 75th percentile lie. You will apply the same formula. P75 is x8 plus L75, that's your Ly, minus 8 into x9 minus x8. These are the two positions within which your percentile lies. x8 is 19.42. 8.25, that's what you calculated. 8.25 minus 8 is going to be 0.25 into x9 minus x8. The difference between these two is 19.42 less 13.40, no. It was 23.45 less 19.42 gives you 4.03. So 4.03 times 0.25 plus 19.42 gives you the final result. It's going to be 20.43 rounded off. So that makes B to be the correct option. B it is. Same data, but something different is required this time. Complete the missing entries in the table below to answer this question. What is missing? We have been given the mean range and mean deviation, mean absolute deviation for the sample portfolio. We will take now the population. Now we will calculate the population mean, population range, and population absolute deviation. An analyst does not perform. An analyst does a performance measurement to compare the risk of contemporaneous sample portfolio with that of S&P 500 contemporary returns by determining the ranges and means and absolute deviations. These are the sample, mean, range, and MAD, and we have to calculate for the population. The comparison shows that S&P 500 appears riskier in terms of, we will have to calculate range. For range, the data has already been arranged in ascending order. This is the lowest value. This is the highest value. The difference between the lowest and the highest value will give you range. Straightforward, 29.6 plus 38.49 gives you 68.09. This is the range. So this indicates that the range is higher than the samples, indicating more diverse, more spread out data in S&P. Next, you have to calculate mean absolute deviation. For that, you need to first calculate the average of all these. Average of all these given as per the solution is 8.037. You will calculate the deviation from all of these numbers, and you will take the absolute number, divide the sum with the total number of observations, 10. It will give you the MAD for the whole S&P, and it will come out to be 12.67. Now you have the numbers to compare. You have the range of S&P 68.09, and you have the MAD to be 12.67. Now you can compare and you can give your conclusion. Both range and MAD indicating that S&P has more dispersion in the data. So we can say that S&P appears to be riskier in terms of both range and MAD. That makes C to be the correct option, and you got C as well. No, unfortunately, there are calculators for stats, but you can't solve it on BA2. Okay, so that gives you C to be the correct option. 23rd. Annual returns and summary statistics for 3 funds are listed in the following table. Fund A has given these returns with this mean and this standard deviation. Fund XYZ's returns, mean and standard deviation for PQR as well. What is required? The fund that shows the highest dispersion. He's talking about range, talking about, let me change the color so as to make it more visible. So it's better that you construct a table A, B, C, X, Y, Z and PQR. We need to calculate range, variance and mean absolute deviation for all of these. And as I said, this is for the sake of practice. Calculating all these things simultaneously in the real exam would be a challenge. So what you will do, find PQR if the measure of dispersion is range. So first for ABC, the highest value is 23, the lowest is 20, so the range is simply 23 plus 20, 43. For XYZ, lowest and the highest, the gap is 44. This is the range. For PQR, this is the lowest, this is the highest, the difference between these two is 24. Now, variance. We don't need to calculate. Variance is just the square of standard deviation. So you're simply going to write 7.8 squared. Don't calculate, just put it this way, because just the numbers themselves will tell you which is the higher one. Clearly the standard deviation 7.8 will give you the higher variance. So this is the higher one. And the last one, and that is what the time will take more time, mean absolute deviation. So I'm going to consult the results, and as per the results given, the mean absolute deviation for ABC is 14.4%. For XYZ is 9.8. What you will do, simply calculate the average and then calculate the deviations from average. Absolute deviation divided with the number of observations, that is 5. And it's 8.8. Now let's see. The fund that shows the highest dispersion is fund PQR if the measure of dispersion is range. If the range is used, then XYZ is showing the highest dispersion, not PQR. XYZ showing the highest dispersion with regard to range. B. Fund XYZ if the measure of dispersion is the variance. XYZ if the measure of dispersion is variance. With regard to variance, ABC is showing the highest variance, not XYZ. Wrong. Questions, option C. Fund ABC if the measure of dispersion is the mean absolute deviation. Yes, mean absolute deviation is the highest for ABC. So as per the option C, ABC is the one that is the highest risk as per mean absolute deviation. So that makes C to be the correct option. And I'm sure you would have got it C as well. Correct. C it is. Using the information in the following table, the sample standard deviation for WVWIGX is closest to. Now this is something that you can do using your financial calculator, standard deviation, and this is how we can calculate. We have been given the data and we can calculate standard deviation. Standard deviation for the sample, don't forget that. Sample standard deviation. So you will call the second data function. You will write 0.67 negative, enter, down arrow key. Remember, since we are using just one variable, so you don't have to do anything for y, simply enter down arrow key again. X2 is 1.71, enter, down arrow key. Don't put anything for y2, just press down arrow key again. The third observation is 42.96, enter, down arrow key once again, and just keep it till here. Now what you will do, press second, stat. You have to call this function 1v means one variable. We just have x only. There's no y. There's no pair of data. And you keep on pressing up and down arrow key. You will get many things related to the data you have just entered. It shows that you have entered 3 values. The mean of these values is 14.66, mean, average, and SX, that is the sample standard deviation, 24.53 and 24.54 rounded off. C is the result. And this is the standard deviation of population. Since it was required that you needed to calculate sample standard deviation, so that is SX. Right, so that makes this one to be the correct option, 24.53, that is C. And C is your result, right? So this is something that you can do using your calculator. Otherwise, some things you will have to do manually and then put it in the calculator to simplify. Next question is question number 25. And what do we have in this question? Over the past 240 months, an investor's portfolio had a mean monthly return of 0.79. Mean monthly return. X bar. With a standard deviation of monthly returns of 1.16. Standard deviation of 1.16%. Right. According to Chebyshev inequality, the minimum number of 240 monthly returns that fall into this range. This is your mean, 0.79. 2.53% would be here. And negative 0.95% would be here. What's the gap between these two? Let's see. 0.79 and 2.53. 1.74. In this, since it's a negative number, you will have to change the sign to calculate the difference. That is 0.79 minus 0.95 will give you 1.74. Right. So gentlemen, the gap between mean and these values is 1.74. We need to see, now the standard deviation is 1.16. This point is how many standard deviation away from mean. That's what we need to calculate. That's what you call K. The gap is 1.74% from the mean, and it is how many times of standard deviation, which is 1.16. It gives you 1.174 divided by 1.74 divided by 1.16. That is 1.5. K has to be greater than 1 in order to use Chebyshev inequality. K is greater than 1. That is 1.5. Now you can use the Chebyshev inequality. That is 1 minus 1 upon K square. That is 1 minus 1 upon 1.5 squared. And if you simplify this 1.5 squared, 1 upon 2.25 minus 1 gives you 0.55%. So it means the at least area of 55.55% is covered within this region. At least. It could be more, maybe 70-80%. But this is at least the area within 1.5 standard deviation from mean. Now, what's the next step? If this is the area covered within the normal distribution, and there are total 240 monthly returns, then what are the number of returns within this region? You just have to multiply 240 with 0.5555, and it will give you the result. 240, say multiply, give you 133.33, and that makes C to be the correct option. So this is the extent to which you will be required to use the Chebyshev inequality. You will be given the data, and you will have to determine the K, and then plugging it in the inequality will get you the required result. No twist as such, which we would have expected from the theory. Moving on, question number 26. For a distribution of 2000 observations with finite variance, sample mean of 10% and a standard deviation of 4, what is the minimum number of observations that will lie within 8% around the mean according to Chebyshev's inequality? We can directly calculate K. Standard deviation is given as 4. Since we are talking about 8% around the mean, so 8% around the mean, 8 by 4 means 2 standard deviation from the mean. This is mean, so 2 standard deviation to the right, to the left. So how much area is it covered under this region? Use the inequality 1 minus 1 upon K square, 1 minus 1 upon 2 square, and simplification of this will give you 1 minus 0.25 or 0.75 or 75%. So the region contains at least, could be 90, but at least 75%, which means we're talking about total 2000 observations. So how many observations fall within this region? 2000 multiplied by 0.75, and gives you 1500 observations fall within 2 deviations, standard deviation from the mean. That makes B to be your correct option. B it is. The mean monthly return and the standard deviation for 3 industry sectors are given: utilities, materials, and industrials. Mean monthly return is given and standard deviation is given. And I'm sure what you have to do. Whenever these 2 measures are given, and you have to calculate the relative risk, coefficient of variation is also a measure of relative risk or relative dispersion. You will divide your standard deviation with the return. 1.23 divided by 2.10, 1.35 divided by 1.25, and 1.52 divided by 3.01. In the first case, it's going to be 1.23 divided by 2.1 is 0.5857. In second case, 1.35 divided by 1.25 gives you 1.08. 1.08 per dollar of return, per $1, or per 1% of return. 3.01 divided by 1.52 gives you 1.50 divided by 3.01. It's 0.5049. Now, based on the coefficient of variation, the riskiest one would be the one with the highest result, materials. This is the industry with the highest risk, and that makes B to be your correct option. And most of you got it. B, and all of you got it. That's right. B is the right answer. Next. The table shows various statistics of portfolio 1, 2, 3. We have been given portfolio 1 with mean, standard deviation, skewness, and excess kurtosis. We discussed very briefly about kurtosis. Just you need to recall, remember, this is your normal distribution. A distribution that is peaked will have positive excess kurtosis, and the distribution that is relatively flatter will have the negative excess kurtosis. Means, in other words, the normal distribution will have a kurtosis of 3. The one that is peaked this way, slimmer, it will have a kurtosis of greater than 3, and the one that is a little flatter, which you call the platy kurtosis, that will have excess kurtosis of less than 3, or in other words, it will be negative. Now, what exactly do we need to do? The skewness of portfolio 1, 0 skewness. When do we have 0 skewness? Skewness is 0 when your mean is equal to your mod is equal to your median. Symmetrical distribution. So the skewness of portfolio 1, its mean return is almost likely. So skewness 0 means this is the kind of distribution we have for portfolio 1. Means mean return is equal to your median. So the first part says the skewness of portfolio 1 indicates its mean return is most likely less than its median. No, mean and median are the same. It's equal to median, yes. Mean, median and mode are the same for this distribution. Look no further, B is the right answer. Next, same data but this time something different. Compared with the normal distribution, the distribution return for portfolio 3 is most likely. Portfolio 3 has excess positive kurtosis. Definitely this is a distribution with spiked returns like this. Right? So, compared with the normal distribution, the distribution of returns for portfolio 3 is most likely has less weight in the tails. Remember, you would have read the theory. The portfolio or the distribution that is peaked at the center has a kurtosis greater than 3. It is fatter at the tail. It is fatter at the tail. I'm sure you can consult your book and you will see two curves will be superimposed upon one another. The normal one and the one with excess kurtosis. You will see that the edges of this one, the peaked one, will be fatter. So it has less weight at the tails. Wrong. It has more weight at the tails. It has greater number of extreme results. Extreme returns will be comparatively more than the normal distribution. It's a simple textbook question. So what we were required to do, compared with the normal distribution, the distribution return of portfolio 3, since it has excess positive kurtosis, so its returns outliers will be concentrated at the two tails. So that has greater number of extreme returns, and that makes B to be the correct option. Two portfolios have unimodal return of distribution. Unimodal means the curve, the normal distribution has just one peak, rather than the bi-model that we just discussed a little while earlier while studying kurtosis. So the portfolio have unimodal return distribution. Portfolio 1 has skewness of 0.77, positively skewed. When a distribution is positively skewed, it will be like this. Or let me draw it in an open space like this. Right? This is called positively skewed. The easier way to remember, the positively skewed will have more data towards the positive side of the x-axis, and negative will be on the opposite direction. So in this case, remember the central, the highest value represents your mod. I use this sign frequently. I'm used to use this sign. This is mod. This is the middle value, median, and mean would be here. So you can say in this question, mean is higher than median, median is higher than mod. Right? So this is the first, this is portfolio 1. And portfolio 2 has a skewness of negative 1.11. So definitely it will be totally opposite to this one. It will be like this. In this case, this is your mod at the highest level. This would be your median, the central value, and this would be your mean. In this case, totally opposite. Mod is higher than your median and median is higher than the mean. Now we can conclude we have got these two. Which of the following is correct? For portfolio 1, the median is less than the mean. For portfolio 1, the median is less than the mean. Absolutely correct. Look no further and you got the right result. A. Next. A return distribution with frequent small gains and a few extreme losses is most likely to be called what? Leptokurtic, let me draw all of these in a single go. This is your normal distribution. Leptokurtic will be more peaked. It will be this way. And mesokurtic will have comparatively flatter peak. So this is your leptokurtic. This is what you call the mesokurtic. This is platokurtic. Now, what do we need exactly? A return distribution with frequent small gains and a few extreme losses is most likely to be leptokurtic is the one that is peaked. Leptokurtic distribution is more peaked with fatter tails. As you can see, since the color is the same, you can see it. It has fatter tail. So, a leptokurtic will have a flatter tail, but what we are looking for few extreme losses. But for leptokurtic, there are more extreme losses here. So this rules out leptokurtic because leptokurtic has more data at the extremes. We are looking for few extreme losses, so that rules out leptokurtic. Positively skewed. If it is positively skewed, it will have arrangement like this. A positively skewed has frequent small losses and few extreme gains. These are the gains, positive side. These are the extreme gains and frequent small losses. But we are looking for few extreme losses, so this again rules out positively skewed as well. Negatively skewed, yes, that makes sense. Negatively skewed is like this. Few extreme losses. Negatively skewed one, Then look at this one. This is negatively skewed. I think I've just misdrew the figure. This is the one that is negatively skewed. With a negative skew, it has frequent small gains with few extreme losses. This makes much sense. Few extreme losses with frequent small gains. So that will make C to be the correct option. C. Which of the following sequence best represents the relative size of mean, median, mod for positively skewed? When it says positively skewed, it's like this. Positively skewed, this is your mean. This is the mod. This is median. And this is your mean. So you can see mean is greater than, median is greater than mod. So which of these arrangement makes sense? Mean is greater than median, greater than mod. That B. B is the right answer, and B it is. Next, just we are at the tail. A distribution with excess kurtosis less than 0. Again, this is a normal distribution. This one is leptokurtic, fatter tail, and this one is platokurtic, the one with the lower than the your normal distribution. So remember, for mesokurtic, excess kurtosis is equal to 0. It is same as the normal distribution. For platokurtic, it's flatter. It will have excess negative kurtosis. EK is less than 1. And for the leptokurtic, spiked one, it will have excess kurtosis of greater than 0. So what we are looking for, a distribution with excess kurtosis less than 0, that is negative, so that is B, less than 0. So that makes B to be the correct option. Just 2 more questions and we are done. When analyzing investment returns, which of the following statement is correct? The geometric mean exceeds the arithmetic mean for a series with non-zero variances. It is totally other way around. Arithmetic mean is greater than geometric mean in case of non-zero returns. That is incorrect. The geometric mean measures an investment compound rate of growth over multiple periods. You have period 1, 2, 3, 4. If you want to calculate the average of an extended period, you need to calculate the compound rate of growth. For that, GM is the best. That's what we discussed in the last LOS. It appears to be the correct option. Let's see option C. The arithmetic mean accurately estimates an investment terminal value over multiple period. No. For this we use geometric mean. So it means that makes B to be the correct option. Last question. Which of the following statistical means best measures multiple fund past performance? Multiple funds past performance, as we have discussed in detail, that if you need to calculate the multiple performances over an extended past period, we use geometric return. That makes B to be the correct option, and B it is, and that ends our reading with EOC questions completely.